Hi everyone, this is Stjepan. Today I'm going to show you the first game I played since I started my YouTube channel. I played it today in the 5th Croatian League. And with this game I'll start a series of videos which will hopefully follow my progress to becoming a much better chess player. And I plan to analyze each and every game I play, whether it's a draw, loss or a win, it doesn't matter. And that way I hope to improve my chess, and I will definitely get to analyze my games into much more detail. And I also think that it's beneficial for players that aren't grandmasters, as most of you are not same as me. And I think the problem with YouTube chess channels is that they mostly cover grandmaster games, and in order to make progress in chess I think you should follow players of your approximately your own strength. Okay, so I was black in this game. My opponent was Bogojevic Ranko. He's a bit higher rated than me. He's 1830 something. I was 1762 in this game. And he kicked off with pawn to e4. And I play the Caro-Kann, so I play the Caro-Kann, c6. Knight to f3. Yeah, and by the way, I'm not going to use the engine for the analysis, because I'm first going to try to analyze the game and tell you my own ideas throughout the game. And in the last part of the video, I'll quickly run an engine analysis just to see where I went wrong. Knight to f3, this surprised me a bit. It's not the most common move. I still played d5, and I was expecting him to play knight to c3 here and to enter the two knights Caro-Kann, but he took, and after c takes d5, this is now the exchange variation, which I must admit is the least exciting of all the variations in the Caro-Kann. So d4, knight to f6, a symmetrical position, knight to c3, and here I played a6, which I wasn't sure whether it's the best move here, but I usually have problems with white checking from the b5 square, or even playing knight to e5, and after knight to e5 I can't really take if my knight is on c6, because then he's attacking my f6 knight with his e-pawn and I'm losing d5. So I played a6, just preventing all of that, but leaving him the option to play knight to e5 if he wants, which will definitely slow down my development. But he continued with h3, and I was really happy about this. And his plan is to stop my bishop from pinning his knight on g4, which is okay, but I think it's a waste of time, because now I play g6 and develop normally. He played bishop to d3, which, okay, is the best place for the bishop since he can no longer check from b5. I played bishop to g7, he castled, and now I played knight to c6. And in this position I was already happy, because now he no longer has knight to e5. If he plays it here, I was planning to take the d4 pawn, and then if he takes with the bishop on g6, threatening the knight, I would just take the bishop, and the material would be equal, but I would have the open h-file for my rook. But he played a very slow move here. He played a3, and the other move I was afraid of in this position was knight to a4, and there would be no way to stop him from entering c5 in that position. And I could play b6 because it's defended by the queen, but after a3 I was very happy to be able to play b5, and now his c3 knight is a bit useless, and the only square it can go to is e2, which will prevent his rook from being useful on e1 eventually. He played rook to e1 here, I castled, he played bishop to f4, and now this is a common idea in the exchange Caro-Kann and in many Panov positions. I played knight to h5, and the point of knight to h5 is to get his bishop back to e3, which will close down his rook, because if he doesn't retreat to e3, then he just loses the d-pawn. And he made a mistake here. He played bishop to h2, and I calculated for about five minutes to see that I wasn't blundering, and I just took the pawn. And I thought he would take with the knight, I would take with the bishop, he could play bishop g6, and then I would play bishop takes f7 with check, and the material would be equal, but I would still have a much better position, because I would have the b7 square for my light squared bishop, and his diagonal would be completely open. But he just took the knight, and after I took the bishop, he didn't play bishop takes g6, he just played queen to d2, and I was the central pawn up, and I'm not sure what the engines will say, but I think I already have a much better position. I retreated the bishop to g7 because I didn't want to risk losing it. I don't like to have unprotected pieces on the board. He played rook a to b1, which I really didn't like, because there is no way for him to break through with either a5, a4 or b4, because if he plays a4, then I would just play b4 and chase his knight away, and after the knight moves, just a5, and I would have a much better position. So I think that rook a to b1 was definitely a waste of time. I played bishop to b7, solidifying d5. And in this position I was considering e6, because I wanted to fianchetto my bishop anyway, rook to e8 or bishop to b7, but I decided to connect my rooks because I was afraid of some tactical possibilities after rook to e8 and the queen moving. He played knight to e2. I thought he was trying to target the d4 square and get to knight to d4. I played rook to e8, and now queen to b4, which in this position he is threatening to play a4 because my bishop is undefended. So if a4 and I take it, then he takes my bishop. And if I allow him to take on b5 with a takes b, then he is regaining his pawn. So first I play d5, which he gave me time for by retreating his knight to e2 and closing down his rook. So after e5 I thought I was much better here. He played knight to g3, exchanging knights, which I also liked. So I took, he took, and here I'm not sure that this was a good move. I played e4, chasing his bishop to f1. And perhaps I shouldn't have played it. Perhaps I should have kept the tension in the position because his bishop wasn't doing much anyway. But after the bishop retreated, now I had to defend his a4 threat. So I played queen to d2. And now if he plays a4, then I just take it and I'm 2 pawns up. He played rook b to d1 here, moving his rook for the second time, so rook to b1 was definitely a mistake. And in this position he is threatening to take with rook takes c4, and after rook takes c4 then just queen takes, and he is regaining his pawn because my queen on d7 is hanging, so I had to defend that. And I think I played a good move here. I played queen to c6, which is both defending the queen and preventing his tactical threat, and attacking c3. So he defended it, he moved the pawn. I played h6 here, which I'm not sure it was precise, but in this position I was afraid if I play rook to d8, then he could just play bishop to h4, chasing my rook to d7, which I wasn't too happy about. So I decided to play h6, and then to exchange the bishop, possibly with bishop to e5, and then if he plays bishop to h4, trying to save his bishop, then just g5, and he would have to trade, and even double his pawns. So I think it was an okay move. He played bishop to f4 here, which I'm not sure was a good move. He now spent a few moves just maneuvering with his bishop, but I'm not sure what the engine will say. We'll see. And in this position now I get to play rook a to d8, and I didn't want to trade the bishops anymore because he wasted another tempo. So he played bishop to e3 here. He's trying to get his bishop to d5, but I'm actually happy about it because I'm a pawn up, and the trade of bishops I think would benefit me. Here I played king to h7, and I played that so I can move my bishop if need be, and I can actually play bishop to f8 and move it to c5 if he allows me, and my h-pawn isn't hanging. And I also think my king is much safer on h7 now. He played bishop to d4, and even though I planned to take the bishop, I spent about 10 or 20 minutes here, I'm not sure. I spent the majority of my time on this move. Yeah, and by the way, it was a 90-minute game plus 30-second increment. But in the end, I decided to take because I expected him to take with the queen, and he did. And now I had a plan of just challenging the queen and going to e5 myself. So I played queen to e6 in this position, planning to get the queen to e5 and just move his queen away. And the trade of queens would benefit me because I have an extra central pawn, and I think my structure is much better. His pawns are pretty immovable on the king side. Here he played bishop to e2, which I also didn't really like. But I played f5 so that he doesn't have the g4 square, even though I could have played it after he played bishop to g4, but I think bishop to e2 was a horrible move. Here he played f3, and in this position, once again, I was actually calculating e takes f3, bishop takes f3, queen takes c1, rook takes c1, rook takes c1, and I would give up the queen for 2 rooks, but I didn't like the position after king to f2, because I would just have to retreat my rook, and his bishop on f3 would attack my d5 pawn, which would be attacked twice now, and I thought that my position would be much weaker, so I decided to keep the tension, and I played queen to e5. And he played queen to b6, attacking my bishop, and now I'm not too happy with what I achieved, because now he has some initiative and he has some threats in this position. First of all, I have to defend my bishop, so I played rook to d7. He took on with f takes e4, and I was, once again, I missed something. I missed that he could play bishop to g4 in this position, attacking my rook after I take. and I could no longer play h5 because I lose the exchange. But if he played bishop to g4, I was just planning to play rook d to e7 and still defend my bishop, and I thought the position would be okay. But he played bishop to d3, and I was really happy about this. And of course I can't take the bishop because my queen is hanging, and I also can't allow him to take on e4 because he's threatening bishop takes c4, and after d takes e4 my rook on d7 is hanging with check, so I have to react. So I played rook to f7, and I was thinking about moving the rook to e7, which would defend my e pawn some more, but I thought rook to f7 was more active and I could actually start an attack in this position. He played rook to f1, and now once again, of course, I can't take the rook, because if I take on f1, then it's with check, he would take with the rook, but I still can't take the bishop on d3 because my bishop on b7 is hanging, so I just decided to defend my rook with rook e to e7. He played bishop to b1 because his bishop now really was hanging, I could just take it. Bishop to b1, and in this position I was thinking about the plan. I once again spent about 15 minutes here, and I didn't really know what to do or how to advance. I definitely didn't want to trade the rooks on f1 because I would give him the f-file, and I was constantly calculating plans with e3 and then d4 and then something on g2, attacking g2, threatening mate. So I played queen to g5, but it was a double purpose move, not only to play e3 and d4, but I also had the idea of placing my bishop on c8 and finally activating it, because I would threaten bishop takes h3 because the g-pawn is pinned. So after rook d to e1, moving his rook for the third time, once again, I'm not sure what the purpose of this move was. I really didn't understand it. I now played bishop to c8, and I was attacking the h3 pawn, so he now decided to go for a queen trade, and I was actually really happy. He played queen to e3, and I just thought that the ending would be much better for me, so I traded everything. First with rook takes f1, because he can't take with the rook, which is defending his queen, so he has to take with the king, and I get another tempo with rook to f7 check. He can't go to e2 because the g2 pawn is hanging. I would play queen takes g2, so he has to go back to g1, and now queen takes e3, rook takes e3, and this I like because his rook has to waste another tempo to attack the d5 pawn because it can't go to d3. And I played king to g7, just getting my king closer to the center, bishop to a2 attacking my pawn, and now I have to be careful because in some positions, if my king was on h8 here, he could, for example, take rook takes e4, and if I take, my rook is hanging, so I just decided to defend with the bishop and not to risk anything. He played rook to e2, preparing to attack the d5 pawn, so I defended with king to f6, and now if he plays rook d2, I can play king e5 and I'm better. So he checked and traded rooks, and perhaps I miscalculated this position, but I thought that it was definitely winning, and I couldn't understand why he went for this because I have a very strong e4 pawn, but it turns out that he is able to block it. So king to f2, king f6, king e3, king e5, and this is now the perfect position for both kings, and now I have to prove my pawn up. And in this position he actually asked me for a draw, but I declined because I just can't lose, so I went on playing, and I actually thought that I could create a winning plan, and I managed to, in the end. He played bishop to b1, bishop to c8, bishop to c2, h5, and in this position I wanted to push my pawn to h4 just to prevent his king from ever entering my queen side. Bishop to d1, h4, and now his king can't go to f3, to g3, or to f4, so I was really happy. Bishop to e2, he's now just repeating bishop moves, and I am actually the only side that can improve, and I'm not sure what the angels will say, but perhaps he had a better plan by closing down the king side somehow. Bishop to d7, now I wanted to push a5 and I had to defend b5, bishop to d1 and a5, and now after bishop to e2, bishop to c6, I played bishop to c6 because I'm planning to sacrifice my b4 pawn, b5 pawn if he's not careful, and if b4, then a takes b4, a takes b4, and if he takes with the c pawn, I can play d4 check, and I'm much better. He has doubled pawns, and I played bishop to c6 before pushing b4 because I wanted to keep the bishop on b7 so that the pawn could never advance his extra pawn that he would have on the king side. So after bishop to g4, I did play b4, but of course if he takes with the c pawn, it would be just immediately losing. So he took with the a pawn, I took, and now he didn't take, he just repeated with bishop to e2. So I took on c3, I didn't want to keep his threat of taking the pawn alive, so I took, he took, and now I actually spent, at this point I had maybe 20 minutes left, and I started to conceive, think about a plan which I could have to win, and I started fearing that the game could end in a draw, and perhaps the engines will say that it is a draw, but I managed to create a plan that ended up winning the game. So I played bishop to a4. My plan was to get the bishop to c4. Somehow when his bishop moves, and I knew that he would just keep moving his bishop, bishop to b3, bishop to e2, and bishop to c4 now. And if he trades bishops, I thought that I would definitely be winning because my king would have opposition and his king would have to move first. So I think it's definitely winning if he takes. He played bishop to g4. Now I probed his g2 pawn with bishop to f1, but he can defend it and gain a tempo. I have no time to infiltrate on f4 with the king. Bishop to c4, king to e3, g5. I now wanted to get my king around the board from the a5 squared and to attack c3. And I thought that g5 was a great move because now he has no way of entering f4. And after bishop to d1, I played king to d6 here. And one thing is certain, that he can't play king to d4 because then I have bishop to f1 just taking the g2 pawn. And he actually played king to d4, and after I played bishop to f1, he just shook his head and he knew that his position was lost. And I think it's lost. He might still be drawing somehow. I didn't check it with an engine, but we will see later on. And he played bishop to b3 because he can now attack my d5 pawn. And after bishop takes g2, bishop takes d5. I spent the entire time I had on the clock calculating g4. And I thought that it was winning in all variations. And I actually played it. The second move I was thinking about was e3 in this position because he can't take the bishop. If e3, bishop takes g2, then just e2 and I'm queening, he can stump me. But I didn't like that he can... I thought he could prevent it with the king somehow. But after g4, which I played, I thought it was just winning in all variations because if he now takes the e4 pawn, bishop takes e4, bishop takes e4, king takes e4, I would play g3. And just take his c3 pawn because the king has to defend me from queening on the queen side. And if he takes, of course, that was too easy to calculate, it's losing immediately. And he, after g4, he took immediately, and I just couldn't believe it. He took with h takes g, and I just played h3. This is now completely lost. There is nothing he can do. He took the e4 pawn, I took the pawn, king takes and h2, and I'm queening, and my king is stopping the c3 pawn, and I will have an extra queen, so he resigned here. So I'm not sure if the game was winning all the time, but he blundered the pawn, and then I entered an endgame, a pawn up, which was perhaps drawing, but I'm definitely happy I managed to win. Okay, let me turn on the engine now. I just want to check out this final position. Okay, bishop to g7. Okay, wait. Okay, it says that I'm better here. Yeah, I'm about minus 1.2 here with the pawn up. This is okay. Okay, this is minus 3 already after e5. Knight to g3. Knight takes. Okay, I'll just run through the game to see if I made any major mistakes. This is all okay. Oh no, my advantage has dropped. This is apparently now only minus 1, but I'm still better. King h7 the engine likes, bishop to d4, takes. This is a good plan, f5 is good. Okay, no, I'm still better, but I'm not winning anymore. Apparently I could have used my advantage better. F takes was good. This is good. Rook to d7, okay. This all seems to be okay. I just want to fast forward to the ending before. Okay, king to e3. Apparently it is winning in all variations. So it says that g5 is a mistake here. It wants to play bishop to d5. I don't see the purpose of that. g5, bishop to d1, king to d6. Okay, king to d6 was the best move. King to d... Okay, yeah, now it's minus 5, minus 10, and it's completely lost. So yeah, after bishop f1, bishop... Yeah, okay, bishop takes g2. Bishop takes, and now g4 is the best move, it's the only winning move. Okay, so now after g4 it says that h takes is the best move. Apparently the second best was c4, which is completely losing. Okay, yeah, so I'm happy with g4. It was definitely the only winning, completely winning variation. And my opponent after the game said that I should have played, in this position, that I should have played d3, but g4 is minus 13, 14 or something, and d3 is minus 3, so it's both winning, but g4 just wins immediately. Okay, everybody, thanks for watching, and I'm sorry if I bothered you with my own game, but I think it's important to follow the games of players which are approximately the same rating as you are, because that's the best way to correct your mistakes. And I must say that I'm very happy that the first game I analyzed on the channel wasn't a loss or a draw. Okay, stay tuned for more chess from the candidates. I will be covering the rest of the tournament a bit later on, and see you soon. Thanks for watching, bye.